Hello students. Some of the students asked me to translate this video into English. So I am trying to present a brief summary of British Constitution. The first and foremost thing about British Constitution that it is an unwritten constitution and it was not written at a particular time period, but it was evolved into a long span of time that is between 1500 years of time period its evolution took place. The evolution of British Constitution is a mixture of the element of chance and wisdom. The most part of British Constitution came into existence by chance, and all the basic political institutions that are the parliament, the bicameral parliament, the two houses of the parliament, that is the cabinet system, the office of prime minister, political party system, and nominal head of the state, and the king in parliament. So all these are the basic features of the constitution, and all these took place, evolved during a long period of time period. When we come to the elements of wisdom or elements that intentionally added the basic features of the constitution were Magna Carta. These three are the main charters of civil liberties or charters for the democratization of the country, that are Magna Carta 1215. This was presented by the people in front of an arbitrary king, John, and he was made to sign this charter, otherwise he would be dethroned. Petition of Rights that was put in front of Charles I, and he was forced to sign the Petition of Rights in 1628. Bill of Rights, this came just after the bloodless revolution of 1688, and the joint kings, King William and Mary, they both were the signatories on this Bill of Rights, and after this it was the basic feature of the constitution that king would be doing his reign in consent of parliament. The Act of Settlement of 1701, this made the parliament taking rights into its hands about the heritage of the monarchy. The democratization of the House of Commons took place through various enactments of the parliament, that are 1832, 1867, 1884 and 1828. All these acts of parliament made the franchise more vast and ultimately making it to the adult franchise and giving rights of votes to the women in 1928. By the acts of 1911 and 1949, the powers of House of Lords were cut short, and the House of Lords became the not only the second chamber, but the chamber of a lower importance and chamber with no importance at all. So when we come to the basic features of British Constitution, these are developed constitution or evolved constitution, unwritten constitution, unitary constitution, The unitary constitution means the constitution does not divide the powers between the center and the state governments, and all the powers are confined to the central government only. So in this way, British constitution is a unitary constitution. Flexible constitution, that means the amendment in the constitution is not, the process is not very tough, and a simple parliament with a simple majority can amend the constitution, as the constitution is an unwritten constitution. It is not written anyhow. So every law made by parliament adds to the amendment of the constitution. Patriarchal and limited government, that means the patriarchal, or we may say that hereditary. So patriarchal and limited monarchy means the monarchy is, the powers of the monarch are limited by the powers of the parliament. Secular constitution, it is not the secular constitution, and this is a theocratic constitution. So the basic feature of the British constitution is that there is a declared religion of the state, that is Protestant Christian religion, and it is compulsory for the monarch to be a Protestant Christian and to marry a Protestant Christians. The most important basic feature is parliamentary mode of democracy. This parliamentary system is the main gift to the world constitutions, and this has been evolved during a course of time in the British political system. So it is a basic feature, that means there are two heads. One is head of the state, that is the king, and one is head of the government, that is the prime minister, and the executive is responsible towards the legislature, that is parliament. Supremacy of parliament. The notion of supremacy of parliament was first characterized by the commentator Dicey in his Law of the Constitution, and he says that the supremacy or sovereignty of parliament means that no other institution is as powerful as the parliament is, and parliament can make any law, can unmake any law, and no court of justice has any power to make the parliament's law void and unlawful. And the parliament law are extended to the whole territory of the sovereign's area, sovereign's territory. So in this way, parliament supremacy prevails in Britain. Mixed constitution, it means that this constitution contains elements of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy all in one constitution. Monarchy is the head of the state. Aristocracy is symbolized in House of Lords, and democracy is the key feature of House of Commons. And the next basic feature is rule of law. Rule of law means in the British territory, there is no rule of any person, but rule of law is prevailed. That means each and every person is treated equally in front of law, and all are equal in front of law, and no person can be punished without any infringement or without any breach of law. And the last is, there is a difference in theory and practice. So there is a huge gap in theory and practice in many practices in British Constitution. What seems to be in theory that does not prevail in practice, and what happens to be in practice that can be never assumed to be in theory. So these are the basic features of British Constitution. Now we come to the essential part of the Constitution, is conventions. So these conventions are the most fundamental part of British Constitution, and most of the Constitution is made out of these conventions only. The conventions, as Dicey said, are those rules by which the arbitrary powers of monarchy was limited. Ogg and Zink say conventions put the flesh on the skeleton of the law. Without conventions, law cannot be workable. So, in this way, conventions make operable the constitution by their flexibility. And J.S. Mill says that conventions are the unwritten threads of the constitution. Difference between convention and law. So this may be asked into a very short or very short answer type question. So the basic difference between the law and the conventions are, the law is made by parliament, but the conventions have evolved by chance. Law is written, conventions are unwritten. Law is backed by force of court, and that every person is punishable at the breach of law, and conventions have only moral support behind them. Law is clear and explicit, and conventions are not, they are ambiguous. Why conventions are followed? This question is answered by three commentators of the British Constitution, that are Dicey, Lowell, and Lasky. Dicey says that conventions and laws are tightly intermingled, and when a convention, the breach of convention takes place, the breach of law automatically takes place, and the breach of law gives effect to the punishment for that. So the fear of the breach of law makes it possible the following of the conventions. Lowell does not support this view, and according to him, conventions have the backing of the public opinion, that's why they are followed. Lasky says that conventions are according to the popular constitutional principles, and they are supported or accepted by all the political parties of the land. That is why any government that comes into that follow the conventions. So conventions are very useful. Conventions are based on public support and public opinion. They are helpful in the execution of the constitution. Conventions made it possible to democratize the monarchy in the land. Conventions promote economic base of the country, and conventions are according to the conservative nature of British people. So all these arguments are made in favor of conventions. So the next important question is the difference between the king and the crown. So it was the bloodless revolution of 1688 that made it possible, or it differentiated the meaning of the king and the crown. Because after this revolution, Bill of Rights was signed by the kings William and Mary, and by signing that charter, it was ascertained that all the powers that were inherited by king would be shifted to a group of institutions or to the parliament. So the parliament, the bicameral parliament, the House of Lords and House of Commons, and the cabinet and the prime minister. So all these institutions together will use the erstwhile powers of king that were inherited by him, and now onwards it was be used by the crown, symbolized as king's crown, but actually it would be a group of institutions. So after 1688, this difference became a constitutional feature of Britain. So if we differentiate between the two, we can say that crown is an institution, that is parliament, bicameral parliament, and the king and the cabinet with prime minister. And the king is of course a person. Crown is immortal and king is a mortal person. Crown is an organic body and king is only an organ of that organic body. Crown possess vast powers and king is only a ceremonial head. Crown is collective and king is personal. So these are the basic difference of the king and the crown. And the what we say the powers of the crown are those powers that are executed or that are used by king with aid and advice of cabinet in consent with parliament. So the crown's powers are used by a group of institutions, that is the king, the cabinet and the parliament. Now the actual position of the king is very important to understand in the constitution. it is said that king can commit no wrong. King can do no wrong. That means king does not do anything, that's why he does not do any wrong. And if he does something in constitutional capacity, any other person or minister is responsible for that work or that function. King cannot make any person to do any unlawful act, because he has no power to make any person to do the things, and his functions are accepted as right functions always, and king has some immunities over others. So, in this way, as he is a ceremonial head, he does not do any work and other persons do the work. This is his basic, this is his fundamental position at present constitutional system. King is a golden cipher. King reigns only and he does not govern. There are some prerogatives of the king, and these prerogatives are the leftovers after the delegation of all his powers to the parliament. So these are the nomination of the prime minister, the dissolution of the House of Commons, and the power of veto on any bill that comes to his consent. According to Bagehot, the king has three powers to affect the governance of the country. These are power to advise, power to warn, and power to encourage the government. And the Bagehot is of the view that all three powers of the king are sufficient in this way that effectively he can effectively affect the working of the government. And if we talk about the justification of the kingship, so all the political parties and all the political experts are of the view that monarchy in its present form is completely justifiable, and this has a strong public support behind it. Because of all these arguments, number one, it has been helpful in democratization of the country, and the king is politically impartial. It has backing of the people behind it. Monarchy is according to the may say conservative nature of the public mind, and the king is impartial. The king is a permanent advisor of the cabinet. A ceremonial head is always necessary in a republican, in a you may say parliamentary form of government, and this post is according to the that necessity. The king's place in the palace is very important during the emergency period. King is a symbol of unity and greatness of the country, and king can be supported on economic basis because the vast fund and the money that would otherwise be ex- wasted on the elections of the head of the state. In this way, this post is economical to the country as well, and the international reasons for the support of the kingship is that the for centuries the king has become the imperial symbol of the British imperialism. Now, the next important institution is cabinet. When we look at the evolution of the cabinet, we see that in the in the norm in the Anglo-Saxon period, an institution named Curia Regis came into existence, and after some time, this Curia Regis was renamed as or reorganized in Privy Council, and this Privy Council is still into existence, but the vastness of Privy Council gave rise to another a small institution, a small practice named Cabal, and this Cabal gave rise to the present form of cabinet. The difference between the cabinet and the Council of Ministers. Cabinet is a group of ministers who are head of the departments, and the Council of Ministers include those ministers that are junior ministers that assist the head of the departments. The cabinet basic function is policy making, and the council of ministers function are basically the implementation of those policies. So in this way, council of minister is a bigger institution and cabinet is a smaller one inside this council of minister. The cabinet form of government is actually the parliamentary form of government, but the parliament has handed over all its powers to the cabinet. That's why this is said to be as the cabinet form of government. The main features of this government is this is separate from the king. King is not directly connected to the cabinet. The cabinet is under the leadership of Prime Minister. Collectivity of the cabinet, that means they swim and sing together for their decisions, and they are collectively responsible towards the parliament, the lower house of the parliament. They are responsible legally to the monarch that appoints them, and they are responsible for each other, that is inter-cabinet responsibility. The main feature is of the working of the cabinet is secrecy. They maintain secrecy, their meetings are secretly held, and no one is allowed to know what was discussed in their meetings until they express it explicitly in front of the nation. Uniformity means all the ministers are members of the same political party, and opposition parties members are not allowed in this form of government, and they are intrinsically connected to the legislature, and it is compulsory, it is essential for the ministers to be the members of any house of legislature, and if they are not, they are supposed to take the membership of the legislature within 6 months. There are various forms of cabinet: coalition cabinet. That means if no party is capable to form the government on its own, so two or three political parties collectively make the government, and collectively their members, their leaders make the cabinet. That cabinet is called the coalition cabinet. War cabinet is mainly made during wartime or emergency time, where quick decisions are required, and this war cabinet supplies the war policies and war decisions to the nation. Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Defense Minister, and Cabinet Minister and Home Minister. Basically, these two, three ministers, or any person that is capable to handle the war situation, may be the part of this cabinet, this war cabinet. Inner cabinet is basically persons or the heads of the department, of the important departments, form importance 3-4 departments, make the inner cabinet to make the fast decisions. And basically the prime minister, foreign minister, home minister, defense minister, or finance minister, the chancellor of the exchequer, that is called the finance minister. So all these are the part of this inner cabinet. And the shadow cabinet, and this is a peculiar type of cabinet, that is basically not a cabinet, but this is said to be a cabinet, and this is formed by the leader of the opposition. And this opposition party, the opposition party of the House of Commons, makes its own cabinet to keep the checks and to have a strong eye on the departments working. So all these cabinets, shadow cabinets, they are responsible for their respective counter ministers department, and they ask hard questions during question time, during sessions of the parliament. And in this way, this shadow cabinet plays a very important role to check the cabinet and to prevent it becoming a despot. The office of the prime minister is very important, because prime minister is head of the government, and it is the head of its cabinet too. The person who is the leader of that political party who wins the most seats of the in the House of Commons is made prime minister. And prime minister, as we can see in this picture, then he is the center of the gravity, or all the powers are centered in prime minister. And prime minister chooses his cabinet, and according to his advice, and according to what list he gives to the monarch, in that way only the king appoints his ministers. So prime minister role is very important in a parliamentary form of government, and that is why in contemporary period parliamentary form of government is called to be the prime ministerial form of government. When we come to the powers and functions of the Prime Minister, these can be headed into subheads, that is, powers relating to cabinet, powers relating to monarch, powers of relating to House of Commons, powers relating to governance, and powers relating to his political party. So these are the formation of the cabinet, the distribution of departments of the cabinet, to head the meetings of the government, and to dissolve the cabinet. He gives aid and advice to the king in continuous intervals. Once in a week, he is the leader of the House of the Commons, House of Commons. And relating to governance, he is responsible for whole the governance and the execution of the laws in the nation, and for this he makes the high level appointments. He is responsible to deal the emergency period of the state, and he is the representative of the state in foreign countries, and he is the leader of the political party, and by his face political parties gets votes. There is a term called cabinet despotism, that is, the cabinet has received so much powers that they are equal to the powers of a despotic government. Many arguments are given to support this despotism, but in practice, but in real sense, cabinet is not a despotic or not a dictator, because many other forces that are, we can see these forces in this picture, because cabinet is surrounded by public opinion. This is limited by, as we have talked about, shadow cabinet of the opposition party, uh, king king's role and parliament's role, and parliament in into its question hours and during its sessions keeps a strong control over cabinet's working. So in this way, cabinet is strong, but it's not dictator. Now, a very important question is parliamentary supremacy. So, what does it mean? It means that parliament can make any law on any subject. Parliament can unmake any law, that it can dissolve its own laws. It can amend on any part of the constitution that actually is not written, but what laws it makes unlaws, that is considered to be an amendment, and the laws made by parliament are considered to be the supreme laws, and the court have no power to make them to announce them null and void. So in this way, parliament is the supreme body. Though in theory parliamentary supremacy is there, but in practice parliament's supremacy has been declined for various reasons, because the parliament's power have been delegated to the cabinet, and now cabinet is there to lead the parliament. And the role of parliament is basically to make laws and legislation, but these legislation functions have been delegated to cabinet. And the vast election areas are also responsible for the decline of the parliament's power, because now the people that fight the elections, they are not capable to fight on their own. They fight under the flagship of any political party, and when they fight under that party's flag, they are under the discipline of the party and not under the discipline of the parliament. And parliamentary procedure and parliamentary working is such that the whole working has been uh, written down or has been controlled by the prime minister. And lastly, there has been a strong decline of financial control of parliament over government. So in this way, parliamentary democracy is now only a thing of the theory and not of the practice. And here in this picture we can see that there are parliament is a composite body, and it's not a unitary body. Parliament includes the king, the two houses, the prime minister and the cabinet. So all these combined make the parliament, and these are different bodies. And in this way, prime minister and cabinet have captured all the powers of the parliament. Now, the Speaker or the Chairman of the House of Commons. So, the question that may be asked on the Speaker about the what is the convention of the Speaker about the Speaker. So, or how the Speaker is elected. So there is a saying about the speaker that once a speaker is always a speaker. That means that once a person is elected as speaker of the House of the Commons, for rest of his lifetime or for rest of his tenure in the rest of his his candidature in the parliament, no any other person seeks election from that constituency, and he is elected without any actual fight. So he becomes the speaker continuously for 3, 4, 5 or 6 terms. In this way, he becomes a non-partisan person of the parliament. He is not related to this or that political party. Once he becomes the speaker, he resigns from the primary membership of his political party, and in this way he becomes the a very a post of greatness, a great post for the parliament. There are two important functions. There are many functions, but two notable functions of the speaker are he gives casting vote when both the sides have equal votes, and he has the authority to certify any law, whether it is a financial bill or not. Now, delegated legislation. What is delegated legislation? So, delegated legislation are the rights, are the legal rights given to the cabinet, given to the executive by the parliament, that they may make rules, orders, laws, and bylaws under any law passed by the parliament. So, in this way, the parliament makes only a superficial structure of any law, and the minute details of that law are basically done through the bylaws, through rules and orders of the cabinet after the execution of that law during continuous time period. So these orders and bylaws and rules have the same effect as of laws themselves. So the basic reasons behind this delegated legislation is the incompetency of the parliament, the paucity of time of the parliament, and the complexity of the laws, and there is a need of flexibility to implement the laws, and during the emergency it is essential to make new laws and new orders and rules and bylaws. So all these things collectively made it a practice that the parliament would make only the outline of the laws, and all the details would be filled by the cabinet. Now, two important legislations that were passed by parliament are 1911 and 1949 legislations. By these two legislations, parliament cut short the powers of House of Lords, and that were cut into two areas. Number one, in a ordinary law, the House of Lords can cannot keep any law to itself more than 1 year, and after 1 year is passed from the date to which it came to the House of Lords, it would be considered as passed by the House of Lords. And the second thing is a financial bill. Any financial bill would be considered as passed by the House of Lords after a period of 1 month. That means House of Lords have power to retain any financial bill to itself only for 1 month, and after this 30 days period, this would be considered as passed by the House of Lords. Now, the rule of law. As we have discussed earlier, as Dicey said in his book, The Law of the Constitution, no person would be punished without any breach of any law, and no person is beyond or above law, and all persons are equal in the eyes of the law. And the last is the main political parties of British politics are Conservative Party, Labour Party, and Liberal Party. Liberal Party had its influence until 19th century, but in 20th century, Conservative Party and Labour Party are two competing political parties. They come into power one after another, and they are they are of same opinion on the fundamental constitutional principles, and they have no dissent over them. So in this way we have discussed the basic features of British Constitution. Thank you.